Welcome to another episode of Lessons from Last Time. This, once again, we're bringing back a return guest, Ken Perry. And it's so funny because, Kirk, you did my last podcast. You interviewed me. You have co-interviewed people with me on the podcast. I think this is a good podcast to announce. You're part of the podcast and actually the Knowledge Coop family now, which is incredibly exciting. So you are part of this. And so here you are again, interviewing another guest. This is part 2 of interviewing Ken Perry. Good luck to you, sir.
I'm excited about this, Ken, because we finished off at an interesting place. And I guess being a part of the Coop now is really kind of the evolution of our connection. And in retrospect, it kind of feels like it was always going to work out this way, but neither one of us could have ever known that several years ago. But I'm so jazzed to be here and really excited about what we're doing. And I'm really excited to continue this conversation because I think we left off we're getting through 2008, which interestingly enough, it was kind of the impetus for the Lessons from Last Time idea. Hey, what'd you learn from the big bust of '08 that you've carried forward and applied in the market that we're in now, which for very different reasons is a really challenging market. But let's get the tail end of '08 and what happened with you and the Knowledge Coop, because we got something else we really need to talk about, because we thought we won after we passed '08, '09, we started to recover and things looked better. And we did. There was a great period of recovery, but we didn't know what was coming in 2020. So let's kind of talk about that transition from '08 to moving forward.
Yeah, I think we left off in part 1. We talked about the, just being in debt and not knowing how I'm going to get through it and all that. And it definitely was, it was a tough time. What I did actually, my biggest way I got through it is we just did this really inexpensive seminar called 5 Ways Out of the Funk. And I just gave it for like almost nothing to all of our clients to try and help them get out of that tough part that they were in. And I talked about, first you have to find out when does my runway run out? I got to get this plane off the ground before it crashes. And, financially, at what point can you not do this anymore? And so I just talked to people about how do you navigate this? And I know there are people that are in business because they've made decisions, and a lot of them made decisions after leaving my seminar to go, I'm going to get out because I don't think I can make it. And people made the decision, I'm going to stay in. And then I was giving people tips on, okay, if you're going to stay in, here's how you do it. Like, here's the strategy. So I basically helped and served my way out of it. I found that in life, if you can serve your way out of things when you're going through tough times, if you focus on you, it gets worse. If you focus on other people, it just gets better. So I always kind of go back to that, who can I help? And then focus on that. And somehow life gets easier. And so I did that, built my way out. And then we were at this point in my life called Broker Knowledge Group. So I had built in 2003 to 2012, we had built Broker Knowledge Group, and really just based on a lot of live education and things like that. In 2012, it occurred to me, like kind of coming out of 9, 10, 11, that what people need more than anything is community. And then next they need, knowledge and education still, and not like continuing education, but they still needed that, how do I do this? Like, how do I do loans? How do I do it the right way? And so, I was, my business partner at the time, Frank, introduced me to these guys that were a startup out of Austin, Texas, but mainly, our devs are in Romania. And he introduced me to these guys, and they were awesome. And I got to work with our lead developer, Dan, and like build something that, they did all the building. I had some ideas, but together we built this thing that would be a community that we could actually deliver content through. And it was fun. Like, building was fun. So I find that if I'm sitting in if I'm sitting in a sadness or just being defeated, I go nowhere. Like, I have to pretty much jump up as fast as I can and figure out what's next.
But that was a critical part of living through '08, '09, whatever, however we want to characterize that time frame, is once the market started to improve, it didn't necessarily affect the fact that there's a lot of loan officers, processors, underwriters, and everyone else who still aren't making the kind of money they need to make, not in the boom era, but just to survive. So there's this process of going through the horrific part that was the Great Recession into a recovered time. There's the gap. You're through the recession, you haven't recovered yet, and that's what you were seeing as helping provide the tools to get to recovered.
It's build time.
Yeah.
Like, that's what can we do? How can we help?
Which is staying true to the mission-driven priority of what is now the Coop after being Broker Knowledge Group. Knowledge Coop is a repository for resources to equip mortgage professionals to succeed. Yes, it can be compliance or it can be CE. Of course, that can be a part of it. That's been the bread and butter. But now this idea of the Coop is this great repository to provide resources consistent to the mission of, I want to help loan officers and mortgage professionals win, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, and it's, when we built it, it was like, let's give companies the ability to speak to their people in an environment where nobody else can see in. You can feed them information. You can help them understand things. You can give them access to all your company resources. Our goal was that they'd be able to run better organizations. And because of that, they would succeed faster. So we were building a launch pad for them, basically. And then we were building training that we could equip them with. So together we could help that company grow, right? And I think it's just that, again, serving and focusing on other people. We just wanted to make it easier for people to do, to run their businesses.
And what do you call the birth date of the Coop?
Our first company went on in June of 2012.
Okay.
That was when and actually it was, the technology was called the Coop. We were still called Broker Knowledge Group, but the tech took off so fast that nobody referred to us as Broker Knowledge Group. They were just calling us the Coop. And by the way, not a lot of people know this story, but when we named the Coop, it was a conference call we were on. We're like, what do we call this thing? Like we've created it. What do we call it? And I had written down, like we were brainstorming, I wrote down, somebody had said co-op, and I wrote down co-op, and I looked back at it. My parents had just built a coop, a chicken coop outside their house. And I was like, wait a second, you guys. Like I look at the COOP and I'm like, we're creating an environment where you can actually fence in your people, you can feed them and help them grow, and you can keep all the wolves out. Like within this environment, it is a coop. Like it's a coop. So people are like chicken coop? I'm like, exactly like chicken coop. You need a place where your people are safe, your people can grow successfully, and they're not out there in social world learning from other people that are trying to recruit them. So if you recruit your people every day, you protect them from getting recruited by other people.
And you as an organizational leader can feed them on a regular schedule.
Yeah.
You can test them on a regular schedule.
Yeah.
You can check their health on a regular schedule, all within the confines of your own organization without having to invite in a third party other than the platform that was created in order to serve that up. Is that?
Yeah, exactly right. And so we got to watch people. Like, I don't want to do anything that I don't get to see the results of. I like building for the results. So if I just build and walk away, it's not that exciting. But I want people to come back and go, this did make a difference. And with the Coop, we can see people leading their people on a consistent basis. And so that was fun. And it really drove us to continue doing that. So we just started building massive amounts of content, and we just started growing from there. And everything, like my memories of 2008 to 2020 are a process of learning, to be a tech company, a process of learning to be who our clients need us to be, a process of learning to run a company, which isn't super easy. But it was just that I still have a lot of good memories because it was build mode for so many years. It felt like a startup. It was really active. It was really fun. And so these were fun years where everything was build and develop. And I started traveling a lot more. I started hiring, it comes a point in a business when you can start hiring people to do the things you're not great at. The trick is finding those people who are great at those things and are as committed to your mission as you are. And so that build was a lot of, let's try this person. Does this person really do it? Does this person really do it? And so putting people into those roles, the struggle is the more I did that, I was doing that while traveling. So my job became travel around speaking, travel around delivering CE, come back, record CE. I was doing all the editing on all of our training that we were doing back then. And then, and run a company and figure out what the benefits will be. Like, it was a lot.
And we've kind of coined this phrase, expanding the brand, but you're taking the idea of Ken Perry, Broker Knowledge Group, the CE solution,
right,
from early 2000 into Ken Perry, Knowledge Coop, CE, and so much more. You can run your company's HR platform out of the Coop now. And I know that was a build out process, but you can train your people on how to make effective realtor presentations from a sales standpoint. There's these resources in the Coop that didn't exist before, really bringing to life the idea that we're expanding the brand. The brand isn't Ken Perry, CE guru.
Right.
Only, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's et al. It's all that encompasses what it takes to run a successful mortgage operation or organization,
Right.
and the tools and resources within one repository to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's a lift, right? And so that lift, doing that lift I had some really talented people that I worked with, and amazing, amazing people. And in fact, during that lift, one of them was Andrea, who was on our podcast. She came on board at that point and was just like an amazing assistant to me, so much more than an assistant. I mean, I've never had an assistant who is just an assistant. Like, managing me is not easy at all. And so she came on as not my first assistant, but she was just amazing. And then we grew and just kept trying to get better and better. But that's not always easy. Like, growing is hard. And I think when we see companies grow, we're like, oh, look, now there are this many people. To do that correctly is not easy. And especially under any sort of pressure. Like, we had software that we were launching. And so with software, you're always going to have bugs. You're always going to have things that you want to do. You always have I want to think it and just have it get done. My dev team is amazing. And so, I mean, these guys I've been working with for 12 years or 11 years, and they're spectacular. But that's a lot, right? And so you're trying to do that while running a company, and you run into snags, and you try to do it right, and you make some mistakes. You make a lot of mistakes. The one thing I learned in those years, 8 to 20, my biggest learning point was not everybody likes change as much as I do. I need change. And so I build my life to create change. And somebody with ADHD should not have worked for a company for 20 years, right? Normally people with ADHD jump around, but I get to keep making it a different adventure. And so I'm running my best adventure, and it exhausts people sometimes. And so it was a lot to go in and go, okay, well, if I'm going to have this be my next adventure, and I believe in it, and I've been right on a lot of these things, and I believe in it. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I also take into account everybody else that's affected by this dream, right? And then how do I bring them along while I'm out traveling and doing the adventures that I like? So I built this world where I go where I want, when I want. I live this adventure. I'm active, social media. I'm very active, and I'm kind of, when I'm home, I'm having fun. When I'm gone, I'm having fun. Life was a big build up until 2020 that was just a blast.
But it requires an infrastructure that's comprised of people who are very different than you and your personality type and your skill set, because it's the infrastructure that has to support the building that you've created, which is go and do and speak and be present wherever you are, but not necessarily be here as often to manage and
and that's
forward.
hard. I mean, I'm gone all the time. It's hard with my family. It's hard with work. I do know that me living the life that I live has a cost that other people have to bear.
So clearly, yeah, without question. But let's talk about for a minute the benchmarks between 2008 and 2020 that you really felt like were the big success stories of. You got these lessons from last time, 2008, and from your life prior to that. So now you're building this new thing out. The Coop is real, and it's alive, and it's expanding. You're expanding the brand, all that stuff. What are the big benchmarks? And you look back on that time period. What are the big wins that you cherish or recall?
So the launch was a win. The launch was funny because when we launched the Coop in 12, I'm not a Microsoft guy. I'm a full Apple guy. And so Microsoft Internet Explorer, my big thing was we found out that everybody was using an older version of Internet Explorer. So just basic things like that, where it's like, oh my gosh, we have an industry that doesn't know technology. And so coding to make it work on all the platforms. The big wins for us were when we started seeing Coops being used, like people are in there using it all the time. Those were big wins. Going to conferences and having people know who we are, and not as a compliance guy all the time, not as a CE guy, but knowing us as a technology that's enabling them to run their companies better. That was big. But really, it just felt like a big, it was a struggle. So I don't want to make that sound rosy, because I mean, I had some tough times, relationship times, in the business. It was difficult the whole time. But man, when we rolled out, I'll give you one of my biggest wins when Dan, our head developer, called me. And he goes, it's like 2013 maybe. And he calls and he's like, hey, get your phone out. I want to show you something. And I could upload a video into the Coop from my phone. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, and he would just give me gifts like that. And so it felt like everything we're doing was radical and awesome and would help everybody. And so most of my big wins revolve around a moment where we released a technology that was awesome, or we did a policy writing boot camp because we found out companies didn't have policies. So we got them out to Hawaii and would just do a week with these compliance officers. And in mortgage, salespeople and CEOs and executives, they get these trips. But a compliance person saying, can I go to Hawaii, is usually a hard pass, hard no. And so we would get compliance people out there and help them have fun while writing policy. So they were like things that we did that were super fun, but everything just feels like it was running forward. It was a lot of...
You were a startup all over again.
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah.
Even though you weren't, you were essentially a startup.
Totally.
Yeah. With all the energy required and all the excitement of, holy cow, this thing works.
Yeah.
And then you break it and you have to fix it and then it works again.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if there was a movie about my life, the window of 8 to 20 would be like me talking over, like I was doing a bunch of seminars, like me like flying through and speaking in all these crowds. And just getting paid to fly out there and speak. I will tell you, to this day, when I go fly out and speak and come back through the Portland airport, my favorite airport in America, when I walk through the airport, a smile cracks every single time, like I'm getting away with something. I get this smile like I just got paid to fly somewhere, have an amazing dinner, meet with amazing people, speak on stage for hours, and go back, and I got paid to do the most, like the best thing ever. Like, this is a privilege to be able to do those things. And so that was always, all of my wins were flying back. I have a playlist that I play, starts with Welcome Back. I think it's Mace. It's Mace, Andy, that does Welcome Back. So I play that as soon as the plane lands. It's like, welcome back, welcome. And it's, those were amazing moments for me, where that, just feeling like I was getting away with something because I was doing what I loved.
Which is a great segue. And it's no accident that I wore one of my favorite t-shirts to our conversation today. Brief backstory. I bought this t-shirt when I was going through my own little cancer battle because I needed to remind myself that you got this.
I'm going to interrupt you. It wasn't a little cancer battle.
Well,
we were a podcast. You were on my podcast. That is, anybody that listened to that knows that it is not.
It was my experience. And I've had people who've gone through cancer who had far worse experience than me, but this was my experience, and it lasted a little over 3 years. Yeah. And I had to constantly remind myself this famous Special Forces Navy SEAL concept of embrace the suck. Mm-hmm. When you're laying in 42-degree water because you have to in BUDS training, and it's just freezing cold, and you're locked arms with your SEAL bud mates, and you just have to embrace the suck, mm-hmm. or you will never be able to get past the mental discipline required to get on the other side of pain or discomfort or bad market or whatever. So I wore this because I knew today we were going to go through this catch-up conversation. Then we're going to talk about what happened in mid Q1 of 2020. And there had been some early news reports about this disease that was coming out of possibly Wuhan, China, or who knows really where at the time. It was all very sketchy, vague information, but a new strain of the flu or a novel virus of some kind. And I wrote it off early on as whatever. I mean, it's going to be fine. And then it progressively got worse and worse. And then the cases grew more and more. And then it turned into this global issue. So let's talk about what happened in 2020, early pandemic. And then let's talk about what happened to Ken Perry as a result of an extended significant distraction created by COVID that started to affect the way we interact, and especially the way a guy wired the way you're wired had to do his job and interact with a world that was now on lockdown.
Even you leading up to this, the way that you led up to asking that question, the more you were referencing the pandemic, the more I started getting shaken up inside, because it wasn't good. We had just bought the technology company. So my developers worked for a startup back then. We bought that startup for the Knowledge Coop and kept all of our devs on. And so we had just had this win where I own the tech now. I had brought in a different business partner, bought out my old business partner. I brought in an investor to help me make that purchase. He and his team did an amazing job in making that purchase. So I'm on top of the world. I own the tech now. We can do whatever we want. We can build the app, which we just released last week. So we could do all these things. And I was like pumped, right? And I signed the documents to buy that company in San Francisco during a conference. And it was a hard fought thing to get that company. Like we had to work really hard to get that company, to get all the work done. So I was like, this is amazing. I signed it. We celebrated. And I got Brian Stevens, who is Frank and Brian. He's known for,
oh yeah, of course.
Brian Stevens, I think he texted me and he's like, dude, they just shut our schools down. And it was in like Vallejo or it was in Fairfield. And I remember going, they can't shut schools down. And I got back from my trip, and remember, I like change. And so it was kind of exciting. Like, this thing is here. And like, it's going to cause us to like have different things. Like, I like different things. This sounds cool. And so then I heard there was going to be a lockdown. A friend of mine told me that, who has an insider, said, hey, they're going to lock us down. I remember walking into Safeway and buying a bunch of, my daughter Aria was a vegetarian at the time. I bought a bunch of vegetarian food, frozen food. I just stocked up on like what we would need for this 2-week stay-at-home order.
2 weeks to stop the spread.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I told the Safeway people, hey, they're going to lock us down. You should know that. And they thought I was insane. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I go, I have on good word that they're going to lock us down. So I'm picking up some stuff. And they were like, kind of like murmuring now, a bunch of people kind of talking through it. And then I just walked out like, this is going to be cool. Like I'm going to see the kids. And
before we go any further, it needs to be said, I want to go on record saying Ken Perry may have caused the great toilet paper run.
I didn't even buy toilet paper on that trip.
So you say, Ken, so you say.
Yeah. So I should back up a second so that people understand I've traveled my whole kids' lives, right? They've never known a stay-at-home dad. They've never known a dad that commutes to work in the morning and commutes back home at night. So I started the company the day after Aria was born. So Avery's literally never known me to work for any other company, and Tate was just a baby. So, and so Aria and I had a conversation. It was her last year in high school, and she said, Dad, is there any way I could talk you into traveling a little bit less on this last year? And I said, yeah, like I can do that. And that was in 2019. So my 2020 schedule, my plan was do fewer gigs because she wants to hang out with me, which was exciting. Like sure. I always told our kids, like, tell me, do you need me home? What do you need? And when she said that, I'm like, this is awesome. I'll stay home more. And then when this happened, all of a sudden, I'm now staying home a lot. So the first couple of weeks were fine. It was kind of fun. And like we did a lot of puzzles.
It's like playing hooky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm staying connected with the team and everything's really good. And I immediately went, okay. We had talked to some friends of ours about doing a digital conference where we could do a conference that would be 100% in our platform. And our devs had actually built, using our technology, built a seminar platform that we could deliver a seminar. So we were already prepping for something like this before the lockdown. And then the lockdown happens and I immediately was like, okay, let's launch the seminar. So we got like the director of FHA. We got, every speaker in the mortgage industry, most of them were in it. We had Renee Rodriguez in the afternoons would get on and like talk through what we went through. So we had a whole day with breakout sessions in our tech and everything. And then a second day with the same. And at the end of every day, we'd have a wrap session where we'd talk about what happened and all that. And at this point, when we did it, everybody was at home. And so by then it was true lockdown. It took a lot for us to get there. So, when I say the devs, we rebuilt, like it was hard. And all of my team was on fire. They were all in it. We were all working from home. Everybody was like focused and grinding. And it took so much, but everybody gave it everything they had. And I was in it and I was loving it. And I'm like, we're doing it. And then we launched this big, giant, technology conference. It was the first digital conference in the mortgage industry. And in my opinion, still the best. And it was awesome. And I wasn't feeling anything but excitement. And I was super happy. And then after the seminar, we didn't have that to focus on. We didn't have work to do for that. We went back to normal business.
Except it wasn't.
It wasn't. And I looked around and I was like, I'm still in a basement. And
so this may be a really poor comparison, and forgive me to anyone who survived the horrible ordeal of 9/11, but the collective effect on the American psyche of 9/11 was unification. It really brought people together because of this horrible thing that happened on our shores. COVID was the same at first.
Right.
Until
right.
it lingered and lagged.
Yeah.
And then there became all this confusing information about what are we going to do and what do we need to do and what's the right practice and the best practice. And so now you launch this digital conference. It's a huge success, but we're not normal yet. Not only is the world not normal, but your world's not normal. And the Coop isn't operating in a normal environment, even though you just pulled off a digital seminar. But to you personally, now Ken's not traveling, Ken's not experiencing diversity and change in his schedule and connecting with people and doing what you love to do that feeds your soul and makes you who you are or feeds who you are. Now this thing's sticking around for a while and we don't know anything about its end or its solution or its cure or if the vaccine's really going to do what it's supposed to do and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about what that produced in you.
Yeah. I've always been happy-go-lucky. I've never understood anxiety. I've never understood depression. I'm like, why don't you smile more? Like, let's just smile. Like, why are we mad? And I would tell people, well, look at all you have. And I could try to talk you out of anxiety.
Cups half full.
Never worked. But I would try because I'm like, I don't understand anxiety. And so, yeah, so we get locked down. I get, every time I pick up the phone, it's somebody canceling a seminar because we had booked seminars throughout the year. And so I'm losing money every day. And so that starts hitting me like, I'm not going to get to travel. And I didn't know how much I like to control my adventure. Like I choose my adventure, right? But how important that is to me and how much I depend on that, I didn't know. So all of a sudden I don't control my outcomes, right? I don't control when I go, where I go, how I go. And in fact, I can't go anywhere. And so now I'm required to live this completely different life. And I say, you know, as a parent, I was really a sprinter parent. And I would come home and I would be like, and then I would leave again. And I could sprint and I could be a great dad. And then I would leave. And then I would come back and be a great dad. And same thing at work. I knew how to sprint, but I didn't know how to run a marathon. And so if you want me to be around a long time, I don't know how to do that. And so initially I was like, I would go, honey, why do we parent the kids like that? And she's like, oh no, you don't get to do that. Like I've raised these kids. You don't get to you just got here, dude. Like hang in. And so I didn't
observe. Yeah.
So I wasn't able to be a great parent and I'm around a lot. So I'm like, but I don't know how to do this. At work was an absolute mess because I'm dealing with everybody having different opinions about things, right? So I'm watching some people be like, this is awesome. Let's slow the spread. And I've got other people that I'm like, I need to get them in front of humans again because you're kind of managing teams going, is everybody okay? And some people weren't okay. And so I wanted to get back in as fast as I could. And so if I would go to the office when we were allowed to and people would meet me there, other people would be like, what is he doing? Is he trying to kill everybody? And so I'm trying to manage all of these different people. And I've always been able to be a people pleaser. And that's a big part of, I'm working on it, but I've always wanted everybody to be happy. And so I could do that and I couldn't do it anymore. So I can't be successful at work. I can't be successful at home and I'm losing money. And I just went into a really deep dive. Every memory I have from this time frame is dark. I don't have memories in the light. I unraveled. I couldn't smile anymore. I couldn't find a reason to smile. And I would watch the news and I was rage scrolling. And the thing that was the worst is I would look at everybody making me not be able to do what I want to do. And I would just hate them.
Sure.
So I hated our governor. And I know there were reasons we had to do things. You don't ever know how the outcome's going to be, right? But still I hated. And I would be vocal a little bit about that hate because I was so mad that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so it unwound. My world unwound. It was, it got worse and worse and worse. And then I get, this is where it's hard. Rock bottom was, I was sitting on the couch with Mindy and we were talking one night and she goes, I love you 100%. I'm starting to not like you. And I looked at her and I said, I hate me. Whew. And I've always loved me. I think I'm a great dude. I've never hated me. Like I've had times that I don't like myself, like a little, but
make mistakes.
I've almost had an unhealthy like for myself for so long. And for me to hate me was the worst because I couldn't fix it. And so, and anybody telling me like, it's going to be okay. I'd be like, really? Really? Like I would just get enraged. And so,
well, and for those that don't know, you're married to mental health professional.
Yeah.
But before you go on, Ken, it's really important to distinguish, like everybody in the mortgage industry went through a lot of what you talked about, except one thing.
They're crushing it.
They're crushing volume and business is booming. So they might not be signing up for live CE seminars, but they're booking business like no tomorrow, and they're making money hand over fist. The only one who's not in your immediate world is you.
Yeah. So I go to Building Champions. I love those guys. And you got Daniel 𝗪𝗁𝗏 to come on our podcast.
Yeah, he's coming soon.
And we had Bill Hart. So Bill Hart reaches out and he's like, hey guys, to the people that he had coached. And I had stopped coaching with Bill because he had, I think he was still there. But so he reaches out and he's like, let's get the band together. Let's talk about what's going on. So they bring everybody together and I'm on this, I'll never forget the Zoom call where I was sitting, what was happening. I'm on this Zoom call and he's like, let's just go around the horn. Let's see what's up. And so first guy is like, doing great, man. Just trying to manage through this. Like another person's like, we are crushing it, but it's just so hard. We have so much business. And like you said, like every single one of them was saying how great it was.
The strangest paradox in the world.
And I'm sitting there listening and I'm like, I'm the last to go. And I know I am because I'm looking at, kind of the way they're doing it. And I go, and in my head, I go, do I tell the truth or do I lie and tell them it's okay? And this is such an important moment for anybody listening. The moment that I chose to be vulnerable and it really started a path of vulnerability that it's been, I share everything now. Because I found out that when you share with people, you get help. I can't even do this. So it comes around to me. All the big hitters are doing great. And it comes around to me. And a few people knew how I was doing. Sean McCluskey is one of my best friends. And I could watch him watching his camera. Like I knew that some people were in on it. Like I had talked to them and they knew I wasn't well. And it got to me and I said, guys, I'm broken. I'm falling apart completely. I don't know how I'm going to make it through. I don't know what to do. And I'm completely destroyed. And Billy Sohan is on the call from the Time Academy. And he goes, KP, write this down. And I was like, oh, he's going to give me the tip on how to get better, right? And I get my pen and I go, what's up? And he goes, and he just gave me his phone number. And I wrote it down. And he's like, bro, if you ever feel that way, you call me. And I think that was a moment where I learned that the people around me, if I'm honest, the people around me can help. And just knowing it was like, okay, I can do this. Like I have these guys. And so I'm not alone. They're not going through what I'm going through, which makes them even in a better position to help me.
They're perhaps equipped to be there at a time where they otherwise might not be.
Yeah.
If the whole industry had been devastated, they've got nothing to give you because they're equally depleted.
Right. I picture like the military guys with the guy in the middle like this, and they're just carrying him through. It's kind of what that was like for me. And it was really the turning point. Like that was the moment that I went, I have friends, I have family. Like I started thinking better. We watched Social
Network?
No, it's the movie that breaks down how social media works to get your algorithms to make you think a certain way. The Social Dilemma, I think is what it's called.
I think that is right.
And Mindy and I shared Facebooks, and I looked at hers and she looked at mine. I found out Facebook was feeding me riots and chaos and madness, and they were feeding her beautiful protests and flowers and
unicorns and butterflies
and recipes. And so it started to occur to me I was being played. Like the stuff that I was clicking was getting Facebook, mainly Facebook, to just feed me more garbage. And so
based on what you had clicked on and what you had fed yourself, you just got a mega dose of it.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, you like chaos? And it just started feeding me. And so I jumped off of that. I started retuning the algorithms. I started leaning into my friends a lot closer. And then I got a therapist. And I only had a therapist at that point for 3 or 4 sessions. And I was just like, and by the way, going to see a therapist is the best thing anybody can do. I mean, I have a therapist now who I freaking love because I can be completely honest with her. She doesn't judge me, and she asks me the questions that makes me figure out what I should be doing or thinking, or like it makes me figure out who I am and how I process. And she doesn't validate that. She gets me to challenge myself in that. So, but this first therapist I saw, it was just like a tune-up, and I started getting better. And at the same time, I had some friends that were going to Bend and they were doing a golf trip, and it was when you could like barely legally do that. And so I went to Bend and I did a golf trip, and it was amazing. But still the whole time, here's the thing. As I'm coming out of it, I still have to deal with, if anybody on my team back at the office sees me without a mask on, I'm going to get it. As soon as I get back, it's going to be chaos. And so I had to deal with office chaos where for the first time, I had lost respect. I had lost trust. I had lost, because of the way we felt about this issue, I had lost the ability to unify. And one of the things I do really well is I bring people together and I unify people, and I lost that. And all of a sudden it's so much of like anything I do where I'm like, can we work from the office? It's like, oh my gosh, really? And it was just chaos, and chaos lasted for a while. So even though I was getting better mentally, company-wise, it was really hard to get through that time because we were growing at this point. We went from 8 people to 43 people. So bouncing through it, it's like
exponential growth.
Yeah, let's hire a bunch and try to do that. And again, growing a company is hard. So I'm trying to do my best of doing it, trying to bring on the right people to do it, trying to share the vision. I had never grown at that rate. And so coming through it, I'm back. And again, as soon as I could go outside legally, I did. And as soon as I can get on planes legally, I did. And I needed that for myself. I needed to be around humans because that was the beginning of the recovery for me.
Well, the story that will be told eventually, regardless of everyone's opinions on how the pandemic was managed, the grace I will give those who managed the pandemic is that this was kind of unknown territory. Mm-hmm. So some of the stuff that was done was obviously overreaction. Some of it was probably an underreaction.
Yeah.
But once the story gets told on this, what will happen in retrospect, the big price that was paid was what happened to human connection as a result of extended lockdown for a period of time that no one could have predicted, in particular on our children who couldn't go to school for a long time. Some people missed their senior year of high school and sports, and more than anything, they lost human connection. And for a human connection junkie who feeds off of it, you lost all of that. And oh, by the way, you're not driving any revenue because you can't book a gig because everybody's on lockdown.
And the funniest thing is we were growing the business. Like the Coop took off.
Sure.
I mean, we had more clients because people were working remote. We help people work remote by helping them communicate better as a company. We help them deliver messaging. My buddy, Rich Jefferson, his mortgage company, every single day since the pandemic began, he has shot a video for his team. In the Coop, every day you wake up, you open up his Coop for his company, and you get to see his messaging. So it's working. I just couldn't. I was so angry about these other things that getting rid of anger was tough. And by the way, to follow up on my Aria story, so Aria had said, I'll travel less for you. In the beginning, when I was a wreck, I go, Aria, do you like me being home more? And she's like, I'm so ready for you to go back and like go back to work. And so, but I couldn't because I was still not traveling. At the end of that, before she left for college, I took her to dinner and I said, hey, how did I do? Like, I know that you had said you wanted me to go back to work early on. How'd I do? And she goes, Dad, gosh, I can't even tell this story. She goes, I got to have 2 dads. And I go, what? And she goes, my dad who was always traveling. And I like that dad. He's a good dad. But then I got the dad that like is here a lot. And she's like, you struggled in the beginning, but you ended up being a great dad at that as well. And that was like it was all I needed to know that there's so many good things that came out of it. Without the pandemic, I don't get that conversation. I don't get that connection with the kids. Tate and I stayed connected because he moved home from college. And so we got all of that. But yeah, back into work. So the takeaway, the lesson from last time on the pandemic is we need each other badly. I need, in whatever form, I need human interaction, and I need humans to be honest with me, and I need to be honest with them. And I need that connection, and that human connection matters. So I know now about myself, if we ever were to go into something like that again, I still need my humans. Like isolation kills literally. And so isolation is the first step, because then when you isolate, you start believing everybody else is doing better than you because all you see is their socials. and you're like, I'm the only one failing, and then you're not
Isolation eventually destroys everyone, regardless of your personality type, and that's why they do it to prisoners of war. They isolate them. It's a strategy that's intentionally used in those circumstances. It would be critical to point out here that you and I are both fans of Ryan Holiday's work.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way, which is basically a Stoic philosophy penned from Marcus Aurelius, who said the impediment to action becomes the action, or I'm paraphrasing him slightly. What's in your path is for you. You might not like it. It might not feel good. It might not even be good, but it's there, and you can't change that reality. So what you have to do is learn from it. Get out of it as soon as you can within reason, without violating, your principles and who you are as a person. But the obstacle is the way. If it's in your path, it's for you. And the second thing I want to point out is when you get to that dark place, regardless of what you do for a living or whether or not you've ever used the Coop as a mortgage professional, seeking help of a qualified counselor or therapist is no different than seeking a trainer when you want to get in shape and lose 20 pounds.
Or a doctor when you're sick.
Or a doctor when you're sick. It's absolutely the same thing. It's just harder to deal with because you feel weird about needing therapy or counseling, but we all do at some point. The question is, are you going to ask for it? So to anyone watching, please, if you're in a dark time, you would agree, obviously, seek help. Call somebody. Call a friend who can help you find somebody that's professionally qualified to talk about it.
Yeah.
However, you started to talk about how the Coop evolved as a result of the pandemic, and the obstacle became the way. So as we kind of put a bow on this Ken Perry story for now, because the story continues as we expand the brand.
Right.
Let's talk about what the Coop has become that benefited greatly from the pandemic.
Right.
As a result of what you had to do to accommodate business in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about what the Coop is today and your vision for it moving forward.
And I want to kind of wrap that. Let me give you one more lesson too, as we get into that conversation. Here's my biggest takeaway from all that stuff we just talked about. Bad things happen. And the bad things get to win if they can't be turned for good in some way. And what I try to talk to the kids about all the time is, if you're going through something, it's because later on somebody's going to need what you have because you went through it. It's the basis of this podcast, right? I've been on more stages talking about what I went through and having more conversations afterwards where people say, that's me. And every time that happens, I get to say, then it was worth it for me. Like going through hell in my own hell, right?
Sure.
We all have levels. And like you said with cancer, like I would even say people had it way worse than I did, of course. But for me, that was so significant, like it was for you to go through what you went through. And if I go through all of that and it's for nothing, it's a waste. But as I go through it, I now look at things and go, oh, cool, something bad's happening because somebody's going to need me to have gone through this to help them through it, right? We become better humans when we not just go through things, but when my buddy used to call it sending the elevator back down. You've already made it to the top of this thing. So anybody else going through it might need something from you, might need some advice, some help. Bill Sohan, when he said that and gave me his number, he had a reason. And it's because of an experience he had where he learned that you need to give people your number when they're going through it. And so no bad thing you've been through can win if you can help somebody else through their bad thing because you went through it.
And it will never fit on a t-shirt, but everything you just said so eloquently and beautifully is exactly this.
Yeah.
Embrace the suck because it's there for a reason, and you're going to come out the other side of it stronger, better, or it'll kill you. Right. And then you're off to a new reality, right?
Yeah.
But embrace the suck because there's fruit on the other side of that really dark place.
Totally.
So the fruit of the Coop.
The fruit of the Coop has been fruit of the Coop. That's so awesome.
It should be a cereal, right?
Yeah. We were able to build what this industry needed. In 2 years ago, we started working on redeveloping our entire interface for people. And what I found is we had served these bigger companies so well because enterprises, big companies use the Coop all the time. But we didn't have an option for people that were alone, right? And so during the pandemic, we noticed that people were taking online CE because they didn't have live to go to. And so everybody was online. And they started interacting because inside of our CE, you can interact under the videos. And I was like, why do we kick them out when they're done doing CE? Like, it doesn't make sense. They're connecting And I'm watching my original dream from back in 2011 when I, thought this up. And I was like, it's working. Like they need to talk to humans and they're all trapped inside. And so here they are talking to each other. And so we redid the entire Coop to create an environment where anybody can go in and connect and build community and get training and learning, and they can go find resources. And so we built that with that in mind of like, humans need connection. Let's have them connect inside of our technology, but in a way where they're learning together. And so we started building everything from how to read a credit report, how to, understand income types, to leadership, how to lead, to how to sell, to how to deal with realtors. So we basically have been for the last 2 years.
How to hire an assistant, how to build a team.
We've just been building everything that this industry needs, and we won't stop. Like, in fact, Kirk, your mission is part of your mission in addition to this podcast is let's find out what everybody needs to learn, because we have access to so many great experts. We can teach everything. And so we've started just building all of that. And now everybody can go into Knowledge Coop. They can watch this podcast. And while they're there, they can connect with people, they can follow people, and they can download the app and connect with people through the app. So we've basically built the community of the mortgage industry. It will be more later, we'll be in more industries. But right now, if somebody's in mortgage, they have a place to go and connect. They have a place to go and get information. They have a place to go and get training. They can join our premium membership, and they can get everything we release goes into that premium membership. And we're releasing content constantly. So we have just doubled down on our mission of training this industry, of making everybody better and giving them a connection point where they go in there, they connect with each other. Not everybody's kind all the time. Some people can be snarky, just like regular social media.
Sure,
We've had a few people that were like, really, dude? But for the most part, we get to see people really get that connection. And in this time, in this market, what people are going through is hard. And if we can enable the connection, if we can coordinate and facilitate that connection, if we can help them have that person they find in there that they've got to help them along, and if they can find the knowledge that they need to be able to go and like be the greatest you can be as a mortgage originator, a processor, an underwriter, anybody in the mortgage industry, if we can help them do that, we win.
Well, it always sounds opportunistic or maybe a little superficial when people say, we're just here to serve. But I mean, it does. I mean, it's a great marketing piece, right? We're just servants, and that sounds great. But one of the reasons I'm here, and one of the things I love about the Coop and have loved for a long time, is that it really is true. It's a mission-driven organization that is here to provide tools and resources to organizations, enterprises, or individuals who don't work for a large company who's going to give them access to all the resources they would or could use. Either one, in varying degrees, whatever your budget and or need requires or allows, from CE to training on almost any subject that involves being a mortgage professional. But the existence of the Coop isn't to run a website and to have online as well as live conferences and CE events and training. It's to serve an industry and eventually, like you said, industries, because it's just a technology platform where you can serve any amount of content out regarding any subject within reason. And that's the exciting thing about the Coop, is it is a mission-driven organization. It's driven by the mission of your early years of, I want to help loan officers get better. I want to help mortgage companies do better. We're running up against a wall and we don't have to. And that, I think, is the perfect summary of what the Coop has become.
It's become what we set out to become back in 2003. I remember sitting in my office right over like 3 blocks that way in the Al Angelo building. I remember sitting there and my thought was, I'm going to leave this industry way better than I found it. And I will never stop working towards that goal.
And it's not mission accomplished, but it's mission executed. Yeah. Well, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your vulnerability. And hopefully people watching this get a great picture of not only who you are, but the why behind the Coop. Simon Sinek's famous for Start With Why, right? If you haven't seen that TED Talk, that should be mandatory viewing for anyone in any business. But your why is apparent, it's evident, and I'm thrilled that we got a chance to sit here and talk about it for a couple of episodes.
It's fun being a guest, man. It's so different.
Again, thank you for letting me take the host chair for this.
You did a great job.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. That's a wrap.
Whew, that is exhausting. Oh my gosh.
I was right about an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, wait, you were right at like 50. A little over 50 minutes.
Perfect.